everyone. As you heard, this is the Learn Lab to scale infrastructure operations with HCP Terraform self-service workflows. They gave me a character count, and I wanted to use every single one of them. So before I jump into the lab today, I wanted to share a few things. So first and foremost, when we get to the hands-on portion of this lab, this is intended for you to follow along. We're not going to be skipping any steps. I don't have anything pre-built that you won't have access to. So if you do have your laptop with you, I see we have quite a few, which is exciting. But if you have it with you, I encourage you to open it up, hop on the Wi-Fi. I think the information's on the back of your badge, and follow along. We're trying a couple new things this year, if you've been to any of our hands-on labs in the past. First, for anyone who completes the lab, we are going to be raffling off a professional exam voucher. You can use this for Terraform or for Vaults. All you have to do is follow along with the lab, and at the end, I'll tell you which screen to keep it on. If you want to make sure you're extra safe, you can take a screenshot of it at the end. And then we're going to come around after we wrap up the lab, verify that you complete the lab, and hand you a raffle ticket, and we are literally going to just do a raffle. The other thing we're trying this year to make it a little bit easier to do the lab is we've set up a in-browser interactive environment, which you can access here. And I have this link on the next few slides, so if you're still getting situated, no rush. But if you're going to be following along, bring up that hashi.co/learn self-service link. This will take you to a written version of everything that we're going to be doing today, as well as that interactive lab. So before I jump into some slides and into the lab, I'll go ahead and introduce who I am and who we are today, what we're going to be doing. My name is Brian McClain. I'm a product education engineer at HashiCorp, which means we spend a lot of time thinking about how you, the user, can learn and grow your skills with our tools. With me today, they already got a nice introduction. We have Navita, Dan, and Ben in the back here. I don't know if you want to wave your hands. They're going to be helping me run this lab today. And they got a few things that they're going to be doing. So first, as you're going through the lab, if you have any issues, if you're stuck, you can raise your hand. They'll come around and try to help you out. We're also going to be pausing for questions a couple times throughout this lab. So they'll come around with a microphone so you don't have to scream at me. And they're going to help me at the end go through and enter you for the raffle. To follow along with this lab, you only need two things. A web browser. We've tested this in Firefox, and Chrome, and Safari. And a HCP Terraform account. If you don't have an account, that link at the top there will have a link on how to sign up for an account. All you need today is just a free account. And as far as our agenda today, we're going to be talking about two teams in an organization. We're going to be talking about who they are and what do they want, how do their needs conflict, and what issues can that create. And then we're going to propose a few solutions. And I want to pause there real quick and just say, as we're going through these slides, through these hypotheticals, I don't want you to think that, well, we don't implement things that exact way, or I can't do that whole solution, so I can't do any of it. What I'm hoping you take away from this today is pieces. So a certain technology, a certain way of using that technology, just an operational approach to things, just something you can take to incrementally improve your day-to-day operations. Once I get through my slides, we're going to talk about the lab, what we're going to be deploying, and how we're going to be deploying it. And then we will jump right in. So let's start by talking about those two teams. The first team I want to talk about, I'm going to call the platform team. This might be called the infrastructure team, the DevOps team. I've seen this called a lot of things in my career. But these are primarily the people who are thinking about the infrastructure in your organization as a whole. They're defining what does it mean to run a Go application versus a Java application. How do you scale it? How do you secure that infrastructure? All of those best practices, they are distilling down and in some cases developing Terraform modules. The other team I want to talk about is a team that consumes those best practices and those Terraform modules, which I'll call the development team. They might be deploying customer-facing web applications. These might be back-end services that are only used internally. But these are the people who are consuming what the platform team creates. And I'd argue that while the contents of these two teams, their priority list looks pretty similar, I think the order is a little bit different. Because at the top of the list, this development team, they want to go fast. They want their infrastructure now. They've already went through their design documents. They've mocked up their UIs. They want to start building. They don't want to have to sit around and wait for potentially days for a Postgres server. The platform team, they want to go safe, right? They want to make sure that these best practices are being followed, that things are being deployed securely, that we're not completely destroying our budget in the first month of the quarter, and making sure that these best practices are being enforced across the organization. And this can cause a couple challenges. So as I mentioned, that dev team, they don't want to put in a ticket and wait for their turn in the queue. They just need their dev environment to start building. At the same time, the platform team wants to continue to grow their best practices, right? They want to develop new versions of the Terraform modules. They want to evolve their definitions of what secure means as we learn more information. And I'd argue a lot of this also boils down to communication, or at least communication at scale. So what we're going to be looking at today is a few solutions. The first solution is right in the title, so no surprise. We are going to see how we can enable self-service. And what I mean by this is how do we automate those things that we really don't need to be doing manually. If I'm deploying a Postgres server, I don't need to go out and handwrite Terraform configuration for every single Postgres server that I'm deploying. I've probably deployed 100 at this point if I'm the platform team. And we're going to do this today by using a feature and a concept. That feature we're going to use is called no-code modules. If you haven't used no-code modules before, they're this really cool way of packaging up Terraform modules with all the information that you need to deploy them, so that teams like our development team can come in and click a button, provide a few values, and it deploys that module without having to write any additional Terraform configuration. The concept we're going to look at is something that we call landing zones. And this is where we are going to give, as the platform team, we're going to give the development team everything that they need to deploy. In the realm of HCP Terraform, this means we're going to create a project for them. We're going to create a team so they have access. We're going to give them their cloud credentials so they don't have to manage those. And they can just start deploying. The other solution we're going to look at today is how we can enforce those best practices. Those things like making sure we're scoping access to our cloud provider correctly. How can we make sure we're staying within budget and make sure that things are running healthy? And one thing we'll take a look at today is if we are deploying truly temporary environments, such as a development environment, how can we make sure that those get cleaned up and we don't keep those running for 3 months rather than 3 days? To do this, we're going to follow what we like to refer to as the module lifecycle, which looks a little bit like this. The steps might shift around in the circle, but this is beginning to end what it looks like to publish a new version of a module. We're going to put our new version out there, and we're going to start signaling to the user, hey, we're still supporting this old version for now, but at a certain date, we're going to drop support for this version. Hopefully, our developers are going to go through, do their testing, and update all their workspaces or their configuration. But as we get closer and closer to that date that we set to no longer support our old version, we want to explicitly communicate with them to say, okay, you have 2 weeks. On this date, you can no longer deploy this module. And then finally, we're going to take that old version out of use by revoking it from our registry. And then start it all over again. So we've talked about self-service. We've talked about enforcing best practices. The last thing I want to talk about before we start talking about our lab today is communication. And the really cool thing is we've kind of seen how we're going to do this effectively. whether it be through that implicit communication by marking modules as deprecated, through that explicit communication by literally sending them messages asking them to update. But to do this, we're going to use a couple more features in HCP Terraform. The first is the Workspace Explorer. This is a way that we can find different workspaces or modules in HCP Terraform that meet certain criteria. In this case, we're going to find all the workspaces that are using an older version of a provider. And then we're going to send team notifications to communicate with our teams effectively at scale. So I'm going to pause here real quick now that we've kind of set some context for everything. And before I start talking about the lab, I wanted to see if there were any questions on some of the topics that we're going to be covering in this lab. Great. So for this lab, this is the same link from earlier if you haven't caught it yet. We're going to be deploying a in-browser game. It's really cool. I don't think anyone's seen anything like it before. It looks like this. Jokes aside, though, what's important is what's running this application. So this is a static website that we're deploying as in an S3 bucket. So we've written a Terraform module to deploy the bucket, configure it, and upload all of our HTML, CSS, JavaScript to run the application. And on the other end, it provides us a URL that we can access this application. And in the lab, we're going to go over everything that we just talked about. We're going to create a no-code module in a landing zone. We've actually written a little bit of Terraform configuration to show how you can automate this. We'll deploy our module and then just work our way around that module lifecycle. We'll deprecate the module, we'll revoke the module, we'll update our workspaces, we'll communicate with teams, and I think we've slipped a couple other features in here as well that we'll take a look at. So I'm going to jump over to the lab. There it is. This is that same link that I shared earlier. And to start the lab, I'm going to scroll down to this box here and click Start Interactive Lab. This should just take a few moments to come up, but for some information on what this is exactly. So this is the lab that's going to handle all the automation to create your organization. It's going to collect some information, specifically a user API token, and then use that token to create the organization that you'll be an owner of. So we're going to give this just one more moment. We have a few in reserve that, there it is. Great. So the first thing I want to do is make sure I'm signed into HCP Terraform. If you don't have an account, we have a link here where you can create one. And if you do have an account but need to log in, we have our login link right here. I'm already logged in. I think we'll see how the Wi-Fi likes me today. So I'm going to click this link here that says HCP Terraform User Tokens Page. And this will bring me to a user tokens page. If you want to see another way to get there, if you're already in your organization, you can also click your user profile at the top here, click Account Settings, and then it should actually take you straight to the tokens page. To create a token, I'm going to click the Create an API Token button here. And we're going to give it a description and an expiration. Since we're at HashiConf, we'll call this HashiConf. And since we don't want this token sticking around longer than we need it to, I could give it an expiration of an hour, but I'm going to say after 1 day, I want my token to expire. I'll click Generate. And then out the other end, it will give us this token here. I want to point out this is the only time HCP Terraform will show this token. So make sure you're copying this. You can actually copy it. Just copy it by clicking the copy button here. And you should get that little green check mark there. So with my token, I'm going to go back to my interactive lab. And I have all these instructions that I'm doing in here, all on the right side if you follow along a little bit easier that way. But I'm going to type in the terminal here, Terraform login. It's going to ask if we want to proceed, just telling us where it's going to store this information. I'm going to type yes. And then it's going to ask for your token value. Just a heads up, it's not going to print the value, so once you paste it and you're wondering why it doesn't show anything, it's just hiding the input. So paste your token here and hit enter. And if everything authenticated correctly, you should be seeing a screen like this, where it says, welcome to HCP Terraform, and shows this very cool ASCII art of the Terraform logo. And again, I want to mention if you're stuck on any of these steps, you can feel free to raise your hand at any time. All of our TAs over there. If someone wants to, I think we have someone up front, up here. Great, so what we've done is we provided a token to this automation, and I'm gonna click this green checkbox, this green box that says the word check on the bottom. And this is gonna start that automation to create your organization. It's gonna set up a couple other things just to help us out and make sure we're not having to set up a bunch of prerequisites before this. It's going to connect to a shared GitHub account so that we can deploy our module from it, and set that up as a VCS provider for us. After you click check, you should see this start button here. You can click that button, and you'll be shown this screen here. I want to point out on the top right here has a link to your organization. So if you want to take a look at that, you can click right on that, and it'll take you to your running organization. And we don't have much in here yet. So what we've done is we've written a little bit of Terraform configuration to, again, set up that project, that team, all the credentials for us. I'll show you that real quick. So let me get a little bit of screen real estate here. So what are we setting up here? We're setting up a project. This is where we're going to deploy all of our resources. We're setting up a team to make ourselves an administrator for that project, where we set that up right here. And then we create a variable set and assign it to our project. In here, we're setting two environment variables, one for the AWS key and one for the AWS secret, and assigning it to our project, which means every workspace in that project will have access to these variables. These two resources here are what actually setting up those variables. And then finally, let me zoom out a little bit. Got some, these resources on the bottom are what are going to be setting up the no-code module for us. So you don't have to actually change any of this configuration. I just want to explain what we are going to be running here. And in the terminal tab, I'm going to type Terraform init, which will download our providers. And then I'll type Terraform apply. It's going to create a plan for us. It's going to see what resources it needs to create. In this case, it needs to create all of those resources. When it asks to, if you want to perform these actions, type yes and hit enter. And this should take just a moment. That's a new error that I found. So we're going to debug this a little bit live. So what's happening here is it is failing to create the module in our private registry. I'm going to actually jump into our registry here and see if we can debug this. I have a hunch on what happened, and I'm very curious why this happened. I'll reaccount these steps if this is what ends up fixing this. So you can just watch this part. Apologies. I'm guessing what happened when I tried to pull this from GitHub. So we may have hit some sort of rate limit. Failed to create webhook on repository. That is a new one. Okay. So I was, not to eavesdrop, but it sounded like you were able to eventually publish a module?
It says like yours.
Same thing? Okay. Okay. We're going to give this a moment, actually. And we are going to go to a quick fallback, which is a recorded demo. Actually, there's still one thing I can do to see while we're waiting on this. Let's take a look at everything that we've deployed in this organization that we've set up. So I mentioned we set up a team, we set up a project, we set up our variable set with our configuration. So let's take a look at that. In my settings, if I scroll down to teams, we can see we have a team here called Terramino Zone Team, which I should be the only member of. Yes, so it's added me as a member. And we set up one new notification with this. So what we've set up here is for any workspace that this team is an owner of, they will receive an email notification. So we'll see this a little bit later with change requests when we ask people to upgrade their modules. We can take a look at the project that we created. Which we have here called Terramino Zone. And in our settings, we can take a look at a couple things here. So I mentioned that the ability to automatically clean up workspaces after a period of inactivity. So again, this is really useful for things like temporary development environments or environments that you know you only need to stick around for a certain amount of time. In HCP Terraform, you can actually set up projects to automatically destroy workspaces after a certain period of time. Here we've set it up to automatically run a destroy operation after 1 hour. But you can set this to, I think anything above an hour is a valid value in this field. We also have our variable set, in this case called Terramino Zone AWS. And this is what will give people access to their AWS environment. We can see our two environment variables here, our key and our secrets. And then finally, if you're wondering where the fun error that we're getting today is coming from, it is from our VCS provider here. So we can see we've actually set up a VCS provider for everyone that was intended to make this a little bit easier than it has been. Let's check in our registry before we jump over the video and see if anything's moved along here. Still pending. Okay. That's why we have videos to fall back on. So what we would find if we would go into our registry and look at that module after it deployed is something like this. This is what a deployed version of a module looks like. We can see we actually have over here this no-code provisioning section. And as a developer, I can click on that provision workspace button to start deploying this module. In our case, if we had any variables that we wanted to have the user provide as input as they deploy this, this is where they would see that input. In this case, we don't have any for this module. So we're going to click Next. And then it asks for a little bit more information. We're going to give the workspace a name of Terramino. And we're going to select that project that we looked at just a moment ago, that Terramino Zone project. So again, that's the project that has our variable set with our AWS credentials. So when this workspace spins up, it will use those credentials to deploy our bucket. The other thing that we have here by default is our apply method. So we can choose to automatically run applies after we create our workspace. or we can wait for a manual approval. In this case, we're going to keep it as an auto apply and click create. So without having to write any Terraform configuration, we already have a workspace that's spinning up and deploying our infrastructure. It's going to go through and create that bucket. It's going to configure that bucket and then upload all of our HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. From this overview screen, we have a little bit of information that we can see just confirming where we've deployed this. On the right-hand side here, we have our project that we've deployed it to. We can see the module that we've deployed it from. And if I fast forward a little bit, once it completes the apply, it will give us our output, in this case, the URL to our running application. And if I click on that, we'll see our application running in S3. So we are right at the top of that module lifecycle that we talked about. We've deployed our new version, and we've created a workspace from it. But we want to create version 2.0. Yeah.
I think a lot of people are getting an error about a non-unique module name in the registry. Modules have to be unique within a provider and module name.
Which they should be, because it's a private registry.
Is it all the same private registry?
No, so these are all separate organizations. We can try another quick, oh, if I could spell, that'd be even better. Let me try one more thing. All right. Gotta love those live demos, right? I appreciate you all sticking around with me, though. So we'll just keep going through this. We'll figure out the raffle afterwards, don't worry. So we want to put out a new version of this module. We want new features. We want to fix some bugs that we've heard about. We want to patch up some security vulnerabilities. So we're going to deploy version 2.0. In the lab, we had set up that we already had a 2.0 tag on our GitHub repository. Excuse me, GitHub repository. So I can actually go in and choose version 2.0 as my module version. This will set this as the active version for this module. And we can see here, we've added one new variable called title at the bottom. We're going to leave this as it is so that when users deploy this module, they'll be asked for a value for that variable. And then we can click Save. And if I go back to my module overview, we'll see this new README that got pulled from the Git repository. And we've included a really nice What's New in version 2.0 section. And here we've updated our version of the AWS provider from version 5 to version 6. We've added that title variable that we've talked about, and we've added some health checks and input validation. I can actually pull up that code so we can see what we've added here. So in version 2.0 of the module, we've added this block. So whenever this check block runs, it will send an HTTP request to our running application and see if it returns 200. And then we've also added in our variable this validation block for our title variable. So here we're checking the length of the variable is between 1 and 25 characters. And if it's not, the user will receive an error. So I'll jump back over to my video here. And we're going to mark version 1.0 as deprecated. So again, this is signaling to the user, we are still supporting this, but there is a limit on the time of support for this version of the module. So in HCP Terraform, you can click the Manage Module for Organization dropdown and click Deprecate Module version 1.0. We'll provide a little bit of information, in this case, that we're going to end support for this on a specific date. And we can direct them how to remediate this. And then we'll also provide a link to additional information, maybe some internal documentation, or maybe a link to this version of the module so that they can learn some more information about it. So when our module has been marked as deprecated, we can see that users can still provision a workspace from this module version. Again, this isn't preventing a deployment, but this is signaling to the user that there is a definitive time that support will end for this module. Great. Let's keep on through these. Now, we have our workspace deployed, and we have a new version of our module out there. As I mentioned, in our new version of our module, we've updated from the AWS provider version 5 to version 6. And we've gone through a lot of work to start in our organization moving all of our modules from version 5 to version 6. As we're approaching the end of that life cycle for our module, we want to start communicating with users, hey, you're still using an old version of the module, please update to the newest version. So in our case, what we want to do is find every workspace that is using version 5, or at least not using version 6 of our module. We can do that using the Workspace Explorer in HCP, which we can click here on the left side. And out of the box, we have a lot of search queries that we can run already built for us. We can find what are the versions of Terraform that workspaces are using, what are the top module versions that are being used out there, or provider versions. For our case, we want to create a new query. So we can click the new query dropdown, and we want to look for workspaces. As I mentioned, we want to find all the workspaces that aren't running version 6 of the AWS provider. So we can say where providers does not contain, and then we'll type in the name and version of the module that we want to find. In this case, we want to find everything that's not running version 6. Since our workspace is running version 5, we get one result here. And these are the people that we want to send that notification to say, hey, now is time to update. So I'll select this here, and we get this new button labeled Create Change Request. And this is where we can provide information to the user to say, hey, we're going to end support for this version on this date. This is no longer a request. This is a very friendly demand that we update to the new version. This field actually supports Markdown as well, so if you want to provide maybe tables of information or a little bit easier to read information as Markdown, you can do that. And what we've done here is two things. One, I don't know if you saw at the bottom there, I got an email, which was my notification coming through saying, hey, update your workspace. But if I navigate to that workspace, on the left side here, we have a new badge next to change request labeled 1. So we have a new change request. If I look at that, we can see that our super grumpy admin said we're running an old version of the provider. We need to upgrade to our new module version. And I've been putting this off for a little bit, so I think it is about time that we do that. And luckily, we have this nice bright yellow banner at the top letting us know that there's a new version and that we can go ahead and update to it. When you click View Update, it's going to ask for any new information that we need. In this case, that new title variable that we created, this is where that gets surfaced. So we're going to give it a very appropriate name of Hello HashiConf and click Confirm. This is going to queue up a new version, a new plan and apply operation, which is going to update that no code module version with our variable value. If I skip forward just a bit, we'll see the resources that it changes here. So we're creating a new S3 object. We're changing a couple existing ones to get those bug fixes and security fixes in. And once this is done deploying, and we go back to that running website and refresh. There we go. So we had, let me back up a little bit. We have our new title of Hello HashiCorp up there showing that we've deployed the new version of the module. So we've created a new version. We've deprecated the old version. In that new version, we've also added those 2 health checks that we've talked about, that check block that we looked at and the variable validation. We can take a look what that looks like in HCP Terraform. So if we navigate back to our workspace, we have the health option on the left side here. And in here, under continuous validation, once it loads, we will have those 2 values. So what HCP Terraform is doing here for our check block is continuously running that assertion to say, does this website, in our case, still return 200? If it doesn't, we'll get some notifications saying, hey, this health check isn't passing anymore. Take some steps to remediate it. We've reached the end of that loop that we looked at, that module lifecycle. And the last thing that we need to do is to take that module out of use for any new workspaces. So if I navigate back to my registry and go to our module, and I change back to version 1 of that module, under Manage Module for Organization, we'll have a new option called Revoke Module. We're going to get this same input that we got before. So we'll let users know, hey, can't use this anymore, it's not supported. And once we click Revoke, I want to point out that we no longer have this provision workspace button at the top right. So we can no longer create new workspaces from this module. So just to wrap up before we take some questions, and I appreciate you all again understanding that the demo gods were not on our side today, as it goes. If you're interested in no-code modules in this kind of self-service workflow, there's a couple integrations I want to point out. The first is HCP Waypoints, which is a really, really cool way of providing developers a way, providing them a catalog of items that they can deploy. So if I want to deploy a new Java application, Waypoint can go out, create the Git repository, set up all the CI/CD configuration that it would need, and they get this slick interface where they don't have to be writing a bunch of Terraform configuration. The other integration I want to talk about, because there's been a lot of work done on it, is with ServiceNow. So if, I don't know, do we have any ServiceNow users? A couple? Yeah. So we have 2 integrations with ServiceNow, and you can actually go through this same no-code workflow that we showed today, completely within inside of ServiceNow. So that gets all added to the CMDB within of ServiceNow. You can track that just like any other infrastructure that you have in there today. If you want to learn more, I urge you to go to our developer website, developer.hashicorp.com. We have some great tutorials out there, some amazing documentation from our team, and we have a lot of actually hands-on tutorials that you can run without all these fun technical problems for no-code modules, for deprecation, revocation, and everything that we've seen here today. So with all of that, were there any questions?
More of an observation. I believe the issue was caused by the fact that GitHub repos have a limit of 20 webhooks per event type.
I think you're right.
So yes,
Yeah.
I think the first 20 people who tested that workshop probably had a great experience with starting
Great.
first person.
Well, for the roughly half or a third of you, I'm glad you had a good time. Yeah, I figured it was something along those lines, something you just don't run into testing it on your own, even if you're testing it multiple times over and over. But that is how it goes, unfortunately, sometimes. But I appreciate the extra context. Thank you.
No problem.
Any other questions before we call it? I know we've went very quickly through this, considering all the tech issues. I'll stick around either here or outside if any of you just want to talk about what we've seen today. If you want to talk more about the features, any of the announcements today, I'll stick around and happy to chat. Otherwise, thanks again for sticking around. Apologies for the technical issues. I think we've all seen those fun little niche problems like that, so appreciate your understanding.